I'm super proud about is that we're rolling things out. We're all customers at the end of the day as well. So it just helps reinforce that mentality. At the same time, these are the same people we pass every day. And when something goes wrong, they're looking for clarity and reassurance. They're not just looking for speed.
The energy system today is being asked to do more than ever before. Serve rapidly growing demand, integrate new technologies, improve resilience, and remain affordable and reliable through it all. Welcome to the Intertie, where we explore how the industry can rise to that challenge by connecting the people, ideas, and practical solutions shaping the future of energy. In the power industry, an Intertie connects separate systems, allowing energy to move between regions and networks. Our goal is to create that same kind of connection through candid conversations with utility leaders, innovators, practitioners, and industry experts. I'm your host, Kyle Loving from Motipower, where we help utilities solve complex challenges. On each episode of the Intertie, we'll explore what is changing, what is working, and what it will take to meet the energy needs of the future. We're excited to kick things off with the first guest, Johanna Fulache from National Grid, who works in the customer experience organization. Johanna, it's really great to have you here.
Thank you. It's amazing to meet you too.
All right, I'm going to hand it over to Austin.
Thank you, Kyle. So, Johanna, how did you end up in customer experience? And more importantly, how did you end up specifically in the utility space?
It definitely wasn't a straight line. When I look back, there's actually a pretty consistent thread throughout my career, I would say. So I started really in customer and community management for startups where I was working with users and clients and doing problem solving and handling high priority issues. And I would say over time, I noticed a pattern where I was drawn to understanding why those issues were happening in the first place, not just fixing them. So I think that naturally that led me into CX focused work where I could help improve things more holistically, right? With whether that's product or process or just working across teams to close gaps between what we think we're delivering versus what the customer is actually experiencing. What's kept me in utility specifically is just how grounded the work is. It's not optional or abstract or nice to have service, right? It's an essential service where people rely on it every single day. The lights need to be kept on. The heat needs to be on during the winter. It's part of everyday life. And I think there's something really meaningful about working in a space where you see the impact so directly. I mean, these are the communities we're serving that we live in at the same time. These are the same people we pass every day. And when something goes wrong, it's not just an inconvenience. It can really impact people's lives. So I feel fortunate and proud to be working in the utility space and be working at National Grid and seeing all of our efforts being put in place to make things, more accessible, easier for customers who depend on these services every single moment of their day.
Just to expand on that a little bit more, can you take us through a day in the life of Johanna and National Grid? And then also more importantly, what kind of problems or initiatives is your team focused on right now?
The problem we're trying to solve here really comes down to just connecting what we're doing internally and how customers are actually experiencing it. Like, utilities are inherently complex, right? There's a lot of moving parts. You have a lot of systems involved, a lot of different teams, highly regulated. So for customers, that can sometimes show up as confusing, or there's a lack of transparency, even if it's not intended, and they're not getting the information that they need at the right time. So a big part of our work, I would say, is shifting from a reactive place to something that feels more proactive, connected, intuitive, and easier to navigate. I think that includes improving how and when we communicate, making sure that the details and information is clear, consistent, and simple as well. And we're really focusing on those key moments that matter. So power outages, right? Or getting help with, or even just starting service to a new home they just might have moved into. So those are the key moments where we can either build trust with our customer or break it. And so at its core, I would say it's about simplifying the experience and making sure that customers feel supported and confident in what's happening.
I'd like to step in here a little bit and kind of pull on that thread. If you look at the customer experience in utilities over the past few years, what feels fundamentally different? What's in flux? What sort of changes initially come to mind?
Customer experience is starting to become more prominent in the organization and has been less about any one tool or any one initiative and more about how customer centricity is understood across the business. I think we're taking that a bit more seriously now. CX was often seen as a responsibility of maybe a specific team, or just a nice to have. Maybe thinking that CX only meant dealing with customer service or talking to someone at the call center. So something somewhat separate from the rest of the business when that's not the case. It's much bigger than that. What we come to realize is that CX isn't something that sits within one group. It really is the outcome of how the entire organization operates. And it's shaped by our operations, it's shaped by our call center, it's shaped by the people who are out there in the field, shaped by our communications, all the teams that are delivering the services. So what's changing, I would say, is moving away from CX being owned by one group and it becoming a shared responsibility across the organization. And I think that's what's fundamentally also in flux is that shift in the mindset, right? And so one of the things that we're doing at National Grid, which I'm super proud about, is that we're rolling things out like customer first centricity. That goes out to all the different teams, whether you are customer facing role or several layers or levels removed from the customer.
Exactly. And then when thinking about interacting with the customer, that's when you can get to the topic of empathy.
Yeah.
And when you look at the different customer use cases or different experiences that they have, where does empathy come into play, and how do you know if you're getting that part right?
In a utility context, empathy matters most in moments where customers are already under some level of stress or uncertainty. So whether that's their power is out or, again, like a billing concern or just in general facing financial hardship. And so in those situations, it's not just about, hey, here's the information you need. It's about recognizing what the customer may be going through and supporting them in a way that feels human. So I like to talk about where our customer advocates team comes in. They play a really important role here at National Grid. They work directly with customers to help them navigate what can be a very overwhelming process, whether that's just understanding all the available programs that are out there, or just how you set up a payment plan, or even connecting them to community resources outside of National Grid. And what's really meaningful about this is that it's very hands-on and it's very personal. It's not just about pointing someone to a website. It's help guiding them through it. And we're also out there in the community, meeting customers where they are. So at local events, community centers. So we're not waiting for people to come to us when they're already struggling. So for me, the empathy part and getting those moments right means making that experience feel human, making sure customers feel heard and supported and not alone in going through all of this.
You mentioned the consumer advocacy group, and just a little bit more about the work that they do and how it relates to the customer experience lifecycle.
Those customers who are having a hard time keeping up with their bills and not knowing where to turn. And in a lot of cases, they're already juggling a lot, whether that's a job loss, medical issues, or just trying to make ends meet. So even trying to find that information out of like what's available to them can feel one more thing they have to manage. And what's been really meaningful to see is how that experience can shift when we simplify the process for them. So for example, one of the things that our consumer advocates share out with customers is that discount rate program. And so in certain situations, customers can be automatically enrolled once they're qualified, so they don't have to go through the additional steps on their own. And that change, I would say, from having to piece things together yourself to having support built into the experience can make a real difference in how manageable it feels. And this isn't just happening in isolated cases. This is something we're doing at scale with the consumer advocates group, with thousands of customers working directly with that team and getting connected to the right support. So for me, what stands out is not just the assistance itself, but how we're making it easier for customers to actually receive it.
Well, it's truly phenomenal. And I think it reminds me of just before I got into this industry, I think I took for granted just every aspect of life that energy and power touches. And once you're in the industry, it's all you can really see, all you can think about. And when you're reminded about it, if there's a storm and there's an outage, and just how difficult it is just for day-to-day tasks of, making a meal to feed your family. Mm-hmm. And for people that are at a disadvantage or have a hardship, and for them to be unable to pay for power, it's phenomenal that there's a program like this that exists to make that possible.
I like to shift gears a little bit and to shift the topic more to AI. So in your experience, how has AI improved the customer experience? And maybe not necessarily just making things go faster, but how have they made them better?
One of the most meaningful ways we're seeing AI improve the customer experience isn't, I would say, enable our employees to better support them. So, for example, here at National Grid, internally, we've been using a tool called Grid GPT, which helps teams quickly access information, helps them summarize complex documents and analyze data in a much more efficient way. And yeah, while that might sound like a productivity gain, what it really does is improve the quality and consistency of the experience, right? Employees are able to get to the right answer with more confidence and have those conversations with customers and amongst their teams. They're spending less
Mhm.
time searching for information and kind of like, how do we piece this together? So, I mean, I think that translates to clear communication, right? More accurate responses and ultimately a smoother experience for customers. And I think that's where AI is most impactful, not just making things faster, but reducing those friction points behind the scenes so that the experience feels more seamless and supportive for the customer.
What's interesting, at least from my perspective, is it's an industry that's constantly evolving. But with that, for the better, you see a lot of more trust going into a lot of the AI systems. I would have to ask you, on the flip side, uh, where do you see AI being a risk of eroding the customer experience?
Customers are becoming more like much more aware of when they're interacting with something automated. And if that experience feels too generic or impersonal, it can start to erode trust pretty quickly, I would say. And that becomes especially important in a utility complex where many of the moments we're dealing with are high stress. We've already talked about them: outage, billing concerns. They're looking for clarity and reassurance. They're not just looking for speed. It's beyond that. And there are broader considerations as well that we need to think about around data privacy, think about bias and making sure that the information that we're providing is accurate as well as appropriate. So I think the key is being very intentional in how we use AI. One of the principles we're focusing on here at National Grid is keeping humans in the loop, making sure AI is supporting the experience, not fully replacing it.
And as you're introducing new tools, new capabilities, and the innovation that's driving that,
Mhm.
how do you measure whether or not you're still getting the customer experience right?
We also have to look at behavioral signals as well, like whether the customer was able to complete a task successfully, or where they might have dropped off, or are they switching channels? Are they switching platforms mid-experience? And in utilities especially, that's a big indicator of friction. If someone starts something digitally, right? If they start service on the web, but end up having to call us, that usually tells us something isn't working as intended. And also the operational side, whether the experience actually works end to end. So really important using all of these different ways of measuring how customers are interacting with us to inform us, are they having a good experience? Does it satisfy their needs from beginning to end? So ultimately, it's less about one single score and more as, are we making it clearer? Are we making it easier? Is it more seamless for the customer? Are we making it more complex and adding effort to their tasks?
I think that's really well said. I can't believe it. This time has completely flown by. We are at the last segment. Like power and energy, I think food is also universal.
Ugh.
So this is Culinary Corner. We have a couple questions for you. Start with the first one. What's the last meal or dish or the last thing that you ate that made you just truly just stop and say, wow?
This will actually be the most stressful episode you asked me so far. We've been talking for a while now. I've gone on several trips and had been to phenomenal places with, excellent food. But I also live here in New York City. So I feel like I'm surrounded by incredible food all the time, sushi, Italian, Mediterranean, Caribbean, you name it. And then there are restaurants you wait 2 hours in line for. So boiling it down to one thing feels a little unfair. Like the last thing that really made me stop and go, wow, was a slice of pizza from a place just around the corner where I live. It's not the trendiest spot. It's not a place where people line up and take Instagram photos, but the ingredients is just always fresh. They're always on point. They do it right. And I know exactly what I'm getting when I go there. And I think that's what actually makes it stand out. It's not trying to be anything over the top. And I don't know, maybe it's just like the CX person coming out of me right now. But there's something really interesting to be said about when something is simple and easy and reliable. So yeah, not a 5-star tasting menu, just a really solid slice.
I think there's beauty in simplicity for sure.
Mhm.
But Austin, I have to ask the same question to you.
Oh, Kyle, hold on, pump the brakes. I wasn't ready for that one. Now, oh my gosh, what are they eating? Oh, I'm sorry. I would probably hop on the sushi train. So there's a local spot here in the Twin Cities. Like Johanna mentioned, it's not particularly a place that I think you go for Instagram photos, but it's a small mom and pop shop, one location, and they put in a lot of work into the craft that they make for sushi. I eat there probably once a month only just because I get frustrated with my chopstick skills, but the experience itself is always enjoyable. All right, Kyle, I'm gonna have to shoot that question back to you.
When I turned 40 in February, we went to Portland with some friends and we ate at this restaurant called Con. And it's a Haitian restaurant from a guy named Chef Gregory from the Top Chef universe, and talking about like beauty and simplicity. And there was so much flavor and soul in some of these dishes. And I specifically remember the red beans and rice, which has a connection to like food I used to eat as a kid. And I remember taking that first bite and just being completely gobsmacked by how much flavor was in there. That would be my answer. And then I've got a guest answer for my 1.5-year-old, who Cade is his name, and we recently introduced him to carnitas. And he was actually the inspiration behind the question, because we put carnitas on his high chair table and he took a bite and like literally said, wow. And then started like kind of shaking as he was eating, and then took another bite and said, wow, and kept like shaking and like doing a full body yes. So that would be his answer.
I love food, and I think even living in New York City, it's like you can't get away from really good food. Even where you guys live, you're probably surrounded by incredible food all the time too, right?
Yeah, it's always that balance of like, do you go back to the places that you know that you love, that you're gonna have a great meal, or like how do you weave in the new that's explore, and that's it's a tension, that it's a fun tension to have, but it's definitely fortunate.
It's a balancing act, right? As they say. But food is definitely like one of my top hobbies.
We're at the end. Johanna, this has been phenomenal. Really appreciate your time, your candor, the thoughtfulness, and for walking us through how you got in the industry, everything that National Grid is doing right now, framing it within the customer experience lens. There's a lot of exciting things, and appreciate you sharing that and for doing so in a really grounded and heartfelt manner. So thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
No, thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun. I'm happy to share what we're doing at National Grid, but also my passion around CX, and especially love also talking about food. So I think we had a pretty successful conversation, I would say.
I think so. All right. Well, that's it. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll catch you next time.